The dead world of Nine had been silent for 3,000 years. Its cities lay in ruins beneath a sky that had turned permanently gray after the last of its atmosphere burned away. Nothing lived here anymore. Nothing had lived here since the Empire fell to its own weapons and its own pride. Lieutenant Casey stepped carefully through the rubble of what had once been a temple. Her boots crunched against shattered stone that might have been sacred to someone long ago. She did not know much about the beyond what the briefing files had told her. They had been warriors. They had been conquerors. They had been dead for longer than human civilization had existed. Casey was attached to the research vessel Starward. She had spent 6 years studying the remains of extinct species across the galaxy. Most humans found the work boring. Casey found it essential. Understanding how civilizations died was the best way to make sure humanity did not follow the same path. The excavation team was mixed. 3 scholars floated ahead of her on their gravity platforms, their long bodies wrapped in ceremonial robes. 2 soldiers walked behind her, their 4 arms carrying equipment that probably doubled as weapons. An engineer named worked somewhere in the back, complaining about the dust getting into his respiratory filters. Leading them all was High Curator, though was ancient even by the standards of a species that lived for centuries. His scales had faded to a pale gray, and his eyes carried the weight of knowledge that Casey could barely imagine. He had studied his entire life. Finding this intact temple was the achievement of his career. They descended into the lower chambers through a passage that had been sealed for. The air inside was stale but breathable. Emergency lights from their equipment cast shadows against walls covered in carved images. Casey saw depictions of battles, of conquests, of enemies being crushed beneath feet. The artwork was beautiful in a terrible way. Then they reached the central chamber, and everyone stopped. The room was circular and vast. Pillars of black stone rose toward a ceiling lost in darkness. In the center stood a single display case made of some material that had survived 3,000 years without a scratch, and inside that case was a suit of armor. Casey had seen battle armor in museums. It was always impressive, designed for their 4-armed bodies and covered in sharp edges that made the wearer look like a walking weapon. But this was different. This armor seemed alive somehow. Patterns of light moved beneath its surface like blood flowing through veins. It was black and silver and something that was not quite either color. Looking at it made her eyes hurt in a way she could not explain. High Curator made a sound that might have been a prayer or a curse. He moved closer to the case, his old body trembling with emotion. "The HAL," he whispered. "The skin of ending. I never believed we would find it intact." Casey had read about the HAL in preparation for this mission. The suit was legendary across dozens of star systems. According to the records, it was a weapon designed to bond permanently with its wearer. It would enhance their strength, their speed, their senses beyond anything natural. But it would also consume them. The suit fed on life force. Every species that had ever worn it had died within minutes, their bodies burned out from the inside. They had considered the HAL sacred. They used it as a method of execution for their most honored prisoners. To die wearing the skin of ending was considered a privilege. The condemned would experience godlike power for a few brief moments before their existence was extinguished. "We must extract it carefully," said. "The scholarly conclave will want to study it in a secure facility. The knowledge contained in its construction could advance our understanding of biotechnology by centuries." The soldiers moved forward to assist with the extraction. Casey stepped back, content to observe. She was a researcher, not a handler. Her job was to document and analyze, not to touch artifacts that could kill her. That was when the ceiling began to collapse. The temple had stood for 3,000 years, but it had not stood well. The weight of the ages had weakened its structure. Their excavation had disturbed supports that were already failing. Stone began falling in massive chunks. Dust filled the air. Screams echoed through the chamber as the team scattered. Casey ran for the exit passage. She was fast, but the collapse was faster. A pillar came down in front of her, blocking her path. She turned and tried another direction, but more debris fell, cutting her off. Within seconds, she was trapped in a small pocket of space with walls of rubble on every side. She could hear the others calling for her through her communication device. High Curator was organizing a rescue effort, but more rumbling from above told her the collapse was not finished. She had minutes at most before the entire ceiling came down. There was only one path that remained open. It led deeper into the chamber, toward the display case that still stood untouched amid the destruction. The HAL seemed to glow brighter now, its internal lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Casey looked up. Cracks were spreading across what remained of the ceiling directly above her. She looked at the suit. She looked back at the ceiling. She made her choice. She ran to the case and slammed her fist against the material. It should have been unbreakable, but it shattered like glass under her desperate strike. She grabbed the HAL and pulled it over her body just as the ceiling gave way. The suit sealed around her like a living thing. It was cold at first, then hot, then something beyond temperature entirely. She felt it pushing into her skin, connecting to her nerves, merging with her bones. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of falling stone. Pain like nothing she had ever experienced flooded through every part of her body. This was why the suit killed its wearers. No one could survive this. No one could endure this kind of bonding and remain alive. But Casey was human, and humans were very good at surviving things that should have killed them. She felt the suit trying to consume her, and she pushed back. Her body fought the invasion with every defense mechanism evolution had given her species. Her immune system raged against the foreign intrusion. Her neural pathways adapted and rewired themselves to handle the flood of new information. Her heart, strong from growing up on a heavy gravity world, kept pumping blood even when the suit tried to drain it. The ceiling came down around her. Tons of stone buried the chamber in darkness, and inside that darkness, Casey refused to die. The darkness was absolute. Casey could not see anything, could not hear anything, could not feel anything except the burning sensation of the HAL continuing its work inside her body. The suit had sealed completely around her, covering every part of her skin from her toes to the top of her head. She was buried under tons of collapsed stone with no way out and no way to call for help. She should have been dead. Every record, every historical account, every piece of research said that no species could survive the bonding process for more than a few minutes. The HAD designed the suit to kill. That was its purpose. That was its nature. But Casey was still breathing. Her heart was still beating. And slowly, impossibly, she began to feel the suit changing around her. The pain did not stop, but it shifted. What had felt like fire now felt like pressure. What had felt like invasion now felt like negotiation. The HAL was adapting to her, reshaping itself to fit her human body instead of the four-armed form of its original creators. She felt it extending along her spine, connecting to her nervous system in ways that should have been impossible. She felt it wrapping around her organs, not consuming them but protecting them. She did not understand what was happening. She only knew that she was not dying. Light began to appear. At first she thought it was coming from outside, that perhaps rescue had arrived. Then she realized the light was coming from her. The suit's surface was glowing with patterns that shifted and changed like living things. Colors she had never seen before raced across the armor in waves. According to the ancient texts, these colors represented the stages of death that every wearer experienced. They were supposed to end in darkness when the host finally expired. Casey watched the colors cycle through their sequence once, twice, 3 times. Then they settled into a steady blue glow that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. She did not know what that meant. She suspected no one did. She needed to get out. The thought came to her with sudden clarity, and the suit responded. Strength flooded into her muscles, strength beyond anything she had ever imagined. She pushed against the rubble above her, and stone that should have weighed tons moved like it was made of paper. She clawed her way upward through the debris, the armor protecting her from sharp edges and crushing weight. Within minutes, she broke through the surface of the collapse and emerged into the ruined chamber. The excavation team was there, standing in the one section of the room that had not collapsed. They had been working on a rescue effort, but now they stood frozen, staring at her with expressions she had never seen on alien faces before. Fear, pure, absolute fear. High Curator moved first. The old raised one trembling hand and pointed at her. His voice came out as barely a whisper. The skin of ending. She wears the skin of ending. The soldiers raised their weapons. The scholars backed away as fast as their gravity platforms could carry them. Even, who had always been friendly to Casey, retreated behind a pile of rubble and refused to look at her. Casey raised her hands, trying to show she meant no harm. The gesture only made things worse. The suit's gauntlets were covered in glowing patterns, and her fingers ended in claws that had not been there before. She looked like a monster from a nightmare that the galaxy had spent 3,000 years trying to forget. "Wait," she said. Her voice sounded strange, filtered through the helmet that covered her face. "I am still me. I am still Casey." "You are contaminated," said. His fear was giving way to something harder. The HAL bonds permanently. It cannot be removed without killing the host. Every species that has ever worn it has gone mad within hours, driven to violence by the suit's influence. You must be quarantined immediately. Casey wanted to argue, but she could not deny what the records said. The HAL had a history written in blood. Every previous wearer had become a weapon of destruction, killing everything around them until they finally burned out and died. She had no way to prove she would be different. They transported her back to the Starward in a sealed container normally used for hazardous materials. She sat alone in the darkness, feeling the suit humming against her skin. It did not feel hostile. It did not feel hungry. It felt almost curious, like a child exploring a new environment. But she did not trust her own perceptions. The suit was designed to manipulate its wearer. Maybe this sense of calm was just another stage of the process. Dr. Park was waiting when they brought her aboard. The medical officer was one of the few humans on the ship, and he had always been kind to Casey during her assignment. Now he looked at her through the transparent wall of the quarantine cell with an expression caught between professional concern and personal worry. "Can you hear me?" he asked through the intercom. "Yes." Casey pressed her armored hand against the barrier. "I do not know what is happening to me. The suit bonded, but I did not die. I do not feel the bloodlust the records describe. I feel normal mostly, just stronger." Checked his instruments. His frown deepened. "Your vital signs are stable, better than stable actually. Your heart rate, your blood pressure, your neural activity, everything looks optimal. That should not be possible." "Human physiology," Casey said. "We evolved on a heavy gravity world. Our bodies are built to handle stress that would kill most species. Maybe that is why the suit could not consume me." "Maybe," did not sound convinced. "They are demanding we hand you over to a diplomatic station for judgment. They want to euthanize you before you become a threat." Casey felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had saved herself from the collapse only to face execution for the crime of surviving. The galaxy remembered what the HAL had done in the hands of previous wearers. They would not give her a chance to prove she was different. "What about Captain?" she asked. "What does she say?" "She is fighting for you, but the pressure is coming from everywhere. The hegemony claims the suit is their cultural property and wants it returned regardless of what happens to you. The collective is demanding your immediate destruction. Half the known galaxy is sending messages about you." Paused. "You have become the most famous human in the universe overnight, and not in a good way." Casey looked down at her armored hands. The blue glow was still there, steady and calm. The suit was part of her now, permanently bonded to her body and her mind. She could feel its systems integrated with her own nervous system. She could feel its power waiting just beneath the surface, ready to respond to her commands. She had put it on to save her life. Now everyone wanted her dead because of it. "I will not let them kill me," she said quietly. "If the suit wanted to make me a monster, it would have done so already. I am still in control. I am still human, and I am going to prove it." The diplomatic station hung in neutral space between three major trade routes. It was a massive structure built by a coalition of species centuries ago, designed to be a place where conflicts could be resolved without weapons. Thousands of beings from dozens of worlds pass through it every day. But today the station was locked down, all regular traffic suspended, because of one human woman in a suit of living armor. Casey stood in the center of a circular chamber surrounded by representatives from 7 major species. The had sent 3 delegates, including High Curator. The hegemony had sent their senior commander, a warrior named who looked at Casey like she was a disease he wanted to cut out of the universe. The, and 2 other species she had barely heard of before this incident had all sent their people to judge her fate. The only human in the room besides Casey was Ambassador Cole, who had been pulled from a vacation 3 systems away to represent Earth's interests. She looked tired and angry and completely unprepared for the situation she had been thrown into. "This hearing will determine the disposition of the human known as Casey and the artifact known as the HAL," announced the moderator. His species was known for their neutrality, which was why they always led these kinds of proceedings. All parties will have the opportunity to present their positions. Senior Commander spoke first. They were a militaristic species, and they did not waste time on pleasantries. "The HAL belongs to the hegemony. They were our ancient enemies, and their treasures became our property by right of conquest after their extinction. This human has stolen what belongs to us. She must be terminated and the artifact returned to our custody." High Curator rose on his gravity platform. "The scholarly conclave disputes the claim. The HAL was discovered by a lead expedition. Furthermore, the artifact is too dangerous to be held by any military power. It must be destroyed along with its current host to prevent it from ever being used as a weapon again." The other delegates offered their own opinions. Most agreed that Casey should be killed. They disagreed only on what should happen to the suit afterward. Some wanted it studied. Some wanted it destroyed. Some wanted it locked away forever. None of them seemed to consider that Casey might have her own thoughts on the matter. Ambassador Cole finally managed to speak. "My government protests this entire proceeding. Lieutenant is a citizen of Earth. She has committed no crime. She put on the armor to save her life during an emergency situation. You cannot execute her for an act of self-preservation." "The HAL is a weapon of mass destruction," growled. "Every being who has ever worn it has killed hundreds before their death. We are not punishing her for putting it on. We are preventing the inevitable massacre that will follow." Casey listened to them argue about her life like she was not even in the room. The suit hummed against her skin, responding to her rising frustration. She could feel its power waiting inside her, power that could tear through every being in this chamber if she chose to release it. The commander was right about one thing. The HAL was a weapon of terrible destruction. But Casey had worn it for 3 days now. 3 days of waiting, of being transported, of being locked in cells and treated like a monster. And in all that time, she had not felt even the smallest urge to hurt anyone. The bloodlust that the records described, the madness that had consumed every previous wearer, simply had not appeared. She decided it was time to speak for herself. "May I address this hearing?" The moderator hesitated. The delegates looked uncomfortable, but protocol demanded that the accused be allowed to speak, so he nodded. Casey stepped forward. The delegates flinched back from her, which would have been funny if the situation were not so serious. "I have read the records of the HAL. I know what it did to the beings who wore it before me. They went mad. They killed. They died. I understand why you are afraid of me." She paused, looking at each delegate in turn. "But I am not mad. I am not violent. I am standing here, talking to you like a normal person because something about me is different from every previous wearer." "Different how?" demanded. "What makes you think you are special?" "I am human," Casey said simply. "My species evolved on what the rest of the galaxy calls a high gravity, extreme weather, dangerous predators, toxic environments. We survived all of it. Our bodies are built to endure damage and heal from wounds that would kill any of you. Our brains are wired to adapt to new situations and find solutions to impossible problems. The suit tried to consume me, and my body fought back. It tried to drive me mad, and my mind rejected its influence. I am not special, I am just human." The chamber was silent. Dr. Park had sent his medical findings to the hearing, and several delegates were reviewing them on their personal devices. The data confirmed what Casey was saying. Her body had somehow reached a stable equilibrium with the suit instead of being destroyed by it. "This changes nothing," said, but his voice was less certain than before. "Even if you have resisted the corruption so far, there is no guarantee it will not claim you eventually. You are a threat that cannot be allowed to exist." "Then let me prove myself," Casey said. "Give me a chance to show that I can control the suit instead of being controlled by it. If I fail, if I become the monster you fear, then kill me. But do not execute me for something that has not happened and might never happen." The debate that followed was fierce. Ambassador Cole argued passionately for Casey's life and pushed for immediate termination. The other delegates were divided, some moved by Casey's words and some too afraid to take any risk. Then the station's alarm systems activated all at once. Red lights flashed. Warning messages blared in a dozen languages. The moderator checked his communication device and went pale. "A warship has just dropped out of hyperspace," he announced. "They are demanding we surrender the HAL immediately, or they will take it by force." Everyone looked at Senior Commander. The delegate seemed as surprised as anyone else. "I did not authorize this," he said. "The hegemony must have sent them without consulting the diplomatic process." "It does not matter who authorized it," Casey said. She could feel the suit responding to the threat, its systems coming fully online for the first time since the bonding. "They are here, and I am the only thing standing between them and everyone on this station." The boarding party came through the station's docking bay like a storm of muscle and metal. 30 soldiers in heavy combat armor, carrying weapons designed to disable any living creature through direct neural assault. They moved in perfect formation, their training evident in every step. The station's own security forces retreated before them, outmatched in both numbers and firepower. Casey walked toward the invaders alone. The delegates had tried to stop her. Ambassador Cole had begged her to hide, had insisted this was not her fight. But Casey knew that if she hid while others fought and died because of her, she would prove the galaxy right about humans. She would prove that she was just another selfish creature willing to let others suffer for her survival. The suit seemed to agree with her decision. Its systems were fully active now, power flowing through its circuits like blood through veins. She could feel capabilities awakening that she had not known existed. The HAL had been designed for war, and it recognized that war had found its new wearer. The lead soldier spotted her approaching and raised his weapon. "Halt! Surrender the artifact and you will not be harmed." Casey kept walking. "The artifact cannot be surrendered. It is part of me now. If you want it, you will have to kill me first." "That can be arranged," the soldier fired. The neural disruptor was supposed to overload any nervous system it hit, causing instant paralysis followed by unconsciousness. The beam struck Casey directly in the chest. She felt a tingling sensation, nothing more. The suit absorbed the attack and converted its energy into additional power for its own systems. She moved before the soldier could fire again. Her speed was beyond anything she had experienced before. One moment she was 20 meters away. The next moment she was standing directly in front of him, her armored hand wrapped around his weapon. She crushed it into scrap metal with a single squeeze. "I do not want to hurt you," she said, "but I will defend myself and everyone on this station." The soldier swung at her with his remaining arm. She caught the blow easily, twisted, and threw him into two of his companions. All three went down in a tangle of limbs and armor. The rest of the boarding party opened fire. Beams and projectiles filled the corridor, enough firepower to destroy a small vehicle. Casey stood in the middle of it all and let the attacks wash over her. The HAL generated shields she had not known it possessed, barriers of energy that deflected everything that threw at her. Then she went to work. She moved through the soldiers like wind through leaves. She did not use the suit's weapons, did not call upon its destructive capabilities. Instead, she used its strength and speed to disarm, to disable, to defeat without killing. She ripped weapons from hands and crushed them. She struck with precisely enough force to knock soldiers unconscious without causing permanent damage. She caught 4 of them at once and threw them into a storage compartment, then sealed the door behind them. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, 30 soldiers lay scattered across the docking bay. All of them were alive. Many of them were awake enough to stare at her in disbelief. Casey stood among her defeated enemies and tried to understand what had just happened. She had fought with skills she did not possess, with techniques she had never learned. The suit had guided her, had shown her how to move and strike and defend, but it had followed her lead. She had wanted to win without killing, and the HAL had made it possible. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The suit was not controlling her. It was learning from her. Every previous wearer had been a warrior. The who created it, the various aliens who had been forced to wear it as punishment, they had all embraced violence as their primary response to any threat. The suit had learned from them. It had become what they taught it to be, a weapon of pure destruction that consumed everything in its path. But Casey was not a warrior. She was a scientist, a researcher, someone who solved problems through understanding rather than force. She did not want to kill. Even when her life was threatened, her first instinct was to find a solution that preserved life rather than ending it, and the suit was adapting to this new template. The HAL had never been meant to be a weapon of extinction. It had been designed to bond with a worthy host and amplify their capabilities. The HAL had simply never found a host whose capabilities were worth amplifying. 3,000 years of violence had corrupted its purpose. Casey's human values were teaching it something different. She activated her communication link. The delegates were still in the hearing chamber, watching through security feeds. They had seen everything. "The suit responds to its wearer," Casey said. "They created it as a tool, not a curse. Every being who wore it before me was already violent. They taught it to be violent. I am teaching it something else." The warship outside demanded a response. Their boarding party had failed, and they were threatening to fire on the station itself. Casey looked toward the outer hull, knowing what she would have to do next. "I am going out there," she announced. "I am going to stop them." Ambassador Cole's voice came through the link. "Casey, that ship has enough firepower to destroy half this station. You cannot fight a warship alone. Watch me." She found an airlock and stepped inside. The suit sealed completely around her, its systems adjusting to provide life support in the vacuum of space. She felt no fear, only a calm certainty that this was what she was meant to do. The HAL hummed with agreement. The outer door opened, and Casey launched herself into the void between the station and the warship. Behind her, she left 30 living soldiers as proof of what she had become. Ahead of her waited a challenge that no single being should have been able to face. But Casey was no longer just a single being. She was human and HAL combined, a partnership 3,000 years in the making, and she was ready to show the galaxy what that partnership could do. Space was cold and silent and impossibly vast. Casey floated in the void between the diplomatic station and the warship, a tiny figure of glowing armor against the endless black. The ship was massive, a predator of metal and weapons designed to destroy anything that opposed the hegemony's will. Its hull bristled with cannons. Its shields shimmered with barely contained energy. It was built to crush fleets. It was pointing all of its weapons at a station full of innocent beings. Casey felt the HAL responding to her thoughts. The suit's sensors reached out, analyzing the warship, identifying its weapon systems and shield generators and structural weaknesses. Information flooded into her mind, more than any human should have been able to process. But the suit helped her understand, translated the raw data into something she could use. The ship's commander was broadcasting a final warning. Surrender the HAL in 5 minutes or the station would be destroyed. He did not know that the HAL was already outside, hovering in the space between his ship and its target. He did not know that his threat had become meaningless. Casey broadcast her own message on an open channel. Warship, this is Lieutenant Casey. I am the one wearing the artifact you want. If you fire on that station, you will have to go through me first. Silence followed. Then laughter came through the communication link, harsh and mocking. One creature against a warship. You are brave, human, but bravery will not stop our weapons. Stand aside, and we may let you live long enough to be studied. I am giving you one chance to withdraw, Casey said. Take it. The ship's first volley was its answer. A dozen missiles launched from its forward tubes, screaming toward the station on trails of fire. Each one carried enough explosive power to tear through reinforced hull plating. Together, they would reduce the diplomatic station to debris. Casey moved. The suit's propulsion systems hurled her forward at speeds that should have turned her body to paste. She intercepted the first missile before it had traveled a quarter of the distance to the station. Her armored fist punched through its casing, and her other hand tore out its guidance system before it could detonate. She threw the disabled weapon aside and went after the second. One by one, she destroyed the missiles. Some she disabled. Some she redirected into empty space. Some she crushed between her hands, letting the suit absorb the explosions that would have killed anything else. The entire volley, 12 weapons designed to destroy fortified structures, eliminated by a single figure moving too fast to track. The warship fired again. Energy beams this time, cutting through space with devastating precision. Casey dodged most of them. The ones she could not dodge, the suit blocked with shields that flared bright enough to be visible from the station. She felt the impacts as pressure against her skin, not pain. The HAL was protecting her, channeling its ancient power to keep its new host alive. She reached the warship's hull and landed on its surface. The metal groaned under her feet. She could feel the vibrations of the engines through the suit's sensors, could sense the crew inside scrambling to respond to a threat they had never anticipated. She did not attack the ship. She did not tear into its hull or destroy its weapons or kill the beings inside. Instead, she walked across its surface until she reached the bridge section. Then she stood directly in front of the main viewport and looked inside. The commander stared back at her through the transparent barrier. He was older than the soldiers who had boarded the station, his scales marked with scars from decades of combat. He had probably won 100 battles. He had probably never faced anything like her. Casey placed her armored hand against the viewport. She could have punched through it, exposed the bridge to vacuum, killed everyone inside. The HAL whispered possibilities to her, showed her exactly how much destruction she could cause if she chose. She chose otherwise. You cannot win this fight, she said, her voice broadcast directly into the bridge. Your missiles are gone. Your weapons cannot hurt me. If you continue this attack, I will disable your ship piece by piece until you have no choice but to surrender. People will die. Your people, for nothing. The commander's face twisted with rage and something that might have been fear. The hegemony does not surrender. Then the hegemony loses ships and soldiers for no gain. Casey kept her voice calm. I am not asking you to surrender to me. I am asking you to leave. Go back to your superiors and tell them what happened here. Tell them that the HAL has found a new kind of wearer. Tell them that the age of mindless destruction is over." Long seconds passed. The commander's crew watched him, waiting for orders. The station waited. The delegates watching through security feeds waited. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The commander finally spoke. "This is not over, human. The hegemony will not forget this insult." "I am counting on it," Casey said. "Now leave." The warship's engines powered up. It turned slowly, ponderously, and began moving away from the station. Casey watched it go, feeling a relief she had not expected. The suit seemed satisfied, its glow settling into a steady pulse that matched her heartbeat. She returned to the station to find the delegates waiting for her. Their expressions had changed. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Respect, perhaps. Wonder. The beginning of understanding. High Curator approached her first. The old moved slowly, his body trembling, but his eyes were clear. "In 3,000 years of records," he said quietly, "no wearer of the HAL has ever shown mercy. You defeated an army without killing. You stopped a warship without destroying it. I believed you would become a monster. Instead, you became something else entirely." "I became human," Casey said. "This is what we do. We take things that should destroy us and we find ways to make them better. The suit was never evil. It was just waiting for someone to show it another way." Ambassador Cole stepped forward and placed a hand on Casey's armored shoulder. "You know this is not finished. They will want revenge. Other species will want to study you or control you or kill you. You have made yourself a target for every power in the galaxy." Casey nodded. She knew. The HAL was too valuable, too dangerous, too significant for anyone to ignore. Her life would never be normal again. She would spend the rest of her days defending herself against those who wanted what she carried. But she would not be alone. The suit had bonded with her permanently, two beings merged into something new. It would protect her as she protected others. Together, they would face whatever came next. She looked out through the station's viewport at the stars stretching endlessly in every direction. Somewhere out there, civilizations were learning that a human had mastered the most feared weapon in galactic history. Some would be terrified. Some would be furious. Some might even be inspired. Casey smiled inside her helmet. Let them come. She was human. She had survived the bonding, survived a warship's assault through nothing but determination and the refusal to become what everyone expected her to be. The galaxy had wanted her dead because they feared what she might become. Now they would learn what she had chosen to be instead. A guardian, a protector, a proof that humans did not merely survive the things that should destroy them. They transformed them into something better.